Well, okay. Well, good morning, everyone. We'll go ahead and kick off this Gemini Zoom meeting. Thanks for joining us. Happy St. Patrick's Day tomorrow to everyone. Hope everybody's looking forward to that. And some of you may be coming off spring break or looking forward to spring break. So hope everybody has a chance to take some time and recharge, regroup for the end, to push towards the end. Today, for our Gemini Zoom meeting, we have got one of our Mercury schools, the Stockton team. They're lining up there in Stockton, Kansas. And so we're very excited to have them with us today to talk to you all about what's been going on with them and redesign in the Mercury project. So we're going to start off this morning with the secondary side. Flip it up a little bit, start off with the secondary side for Stockton, so 7 through 12, and they're going to talk you through that. But I think to start, we may want to have some introductions. So Shelly, if you wouldn't mind, you could unmute, and just if you guys want to introduce yourselves, that'd be great.
Go ahead, Lee.
I'm Lee Lindsay. I teach in high school. I teach both English and math.
I'm Andrea Dix. I teach 4th through 8th grade math and science.
I'm Andrea Graham. Andrea Graham, and I teach kindergarten.
Lindsay Johnson, 4th and 5th math and K through 8 counselor.
Jenny Niblock, and I teach 8 through 12 family consumer sciences.
I'm stepping into the picture, Stacy Green, pre-K 8 principal.
I'm Shelly. I'm high school principal.
And so so thanks for joining us this morning. And I think this is not only the Stockton's redesign team, but also their building leadership team. So and just a little bit about Stockton. They have 2 buildings side by side, and they share staff between 7th grade, 8th grade, and the high school. But it's really they're redesigning their entire district. And it's just been wonderful to work with the team there in Stockton. So again, starting with the secondary side, and then here in about 25 minutes, we'll switch it over to the elementary side, and Tammy can moderate at that point. And as Stockton talks about and answers these questions that we have for them, if you have questions, feel free to unmute and ask, or you can also utilize the chat function. So we'll start off with this. Could you talk a little bit about, and I know we're kind of wrapping up the pilot phase in some cases, but could you talk a little bit about some of the redesign strategies at the secondary level that you've piloted recently, and include some of the details about who's involved, teachers and staff, how long did the pilot go, what are some of the logistics that you had to overcome to pull the pilot together?
Guys, want to go first? At the high school level, we did a couple different pilots. Jenny, you want to talk a little bit about mentoring communities and mentoring, what you've done there?
With what I've done with mentoring is I have a small group last hour, and it's kind of advisory where we check their grades every week and talk to them about what are you going to do about it, what is your plan to bring that grade up. We also have been doing some career mentoring, setting goals, thinking about classes that you've taken now and what you can take to prepare yourself for your future. And I've piloted some information from Ramp Up to Readiness, which is a program from University of Minnesota. So I have a small group in mind, and we're focusing more on the career and academic side. But with our conversations and having a small group, we also are developing some relationships and social skills.
So you're piloting kind of an advisor system or a mentor system where it's got a focus of career and academics both, and maybe peeking into that hidden curriculum of social emotional learning.
Group of freshmen through high schoolers, which I think is nice for them to kind of learn from each other what step they're on with their journey. We talk a lot with the senior that's in my group, and he's shared his college visits and getting ready for scholarships and general panic he's going through. So it's good underclassmen to see that.
So it's a mixed grade level group.
Yes.
I also teach in a high school. That's me. End of the day, we have an ACE class, and it's a mixed group of high school freshmen through seniors. And on my part in community, we are more on the social emotional side that I've been working with basically the biggest issue that we've been working on has been the trust issue, both trust between student and teacher, as well as student and with their peers. And that's a social emotional piece that we've been working on, that we deal with the mentoring / community piece. Another pilot that we're running in the high school is based off of our trauma response schools that we're working through, and that deals with zones of regulation. And there's 3 of us. I'm doing it with my first hour English 4 class. I have my counterpart in the English department is working with sophomores and juniors in his English class. And we have a third teacher that is working with a smaller group, more one-on-one. And she has 5 students that she meets with in the morning, and then again later on in the afternoon. With the zones, they are learning about what their emotions are, how to identify them, how can we change from one emotion to the other, and what zones create our highest level of productivity. And I feel like it's working fairly well. It gets the students in conversations right off the bat, first thing in the morning, as far as, oh, we're tired today, or I'm frustrated today, or nope, I'm ready to learn today. And the one part I like about our third ladies is she not only gets to have that conversation in the morning with them, but she also has the opportunity to come back in the afternoon and revisit how their day has progressed. Have they moved from one zone to another and been able to refocus and move on? So that's a second pilot that we're working with, is the trauma-based zones of regulation.
Okay, so you've hit on mentoring, you've hit on the community aspect where you have the social emotional learning, those mentoring groups, the community groups, and that you've also added in trauma informed and zones of regulation. What other things maybe that you've looked into, maybe you didn't pilot those things, but what other things have you looked into to be part of your launch in the fall at the secondary level?
We have about 8 different pilots, 3 or 4 of them that we're actually progressing, collecting a little data on as we move through. 3 or 4 of them have been additional research items. Probably one of the biggest pieces that we haven't had an opportunity to play around with, but have done quite a bit of research on, is the Flex Mod schedule, which it will definitely be a change for us. But our interpretation of the Flex Mod is it's not something that's going to be a learning device, but it's a tool that we're going to be able to use to help us implement a lot of the other strategies that will definitely affect our student outcomes. Another project is a capstone project, which sounds like it's for seniors, but I think what we envision it is starts as early as 8th grade, maybe even earlier, that a student works at a vision that they have for when they get out of school. Where do they want to go? What do they want to be? And they work through that process through 4 or 5 or 6 years with a culminating piece that senior year that they make a presentation on. Another piece is we're definitely looking at standards-based grading. We have one, my counterpart in English has been piloting the standards-based grading in his class, and we're looking at additional training this summer on standard-based that we can push it across all of our curriculums. What else do we have?
Project-based learning, PBL.
Okay. Another one in the high school that we're looking at is project-based learning. We're sending a small group to Buck Institute at the end of May, and then between them and additional training in the summer, we hope to implement project-based learning next fall. And the last piece that I have on my list is individual plans of study, which again, we're getting additional professional development on to implement into next year.
All sides.
They keep filling in details that I'm leaving out. Another component is a piece called All Sides, which challenges the students to look at others' perspectives other than their own, and which is has been piloted. Our counselors come in a couple of different classes and has the students look at controversial issues and how can you have a conversation with somebody that has a different viewpoint than you. And so it's definitely challenging. And so that's another pilot that we've run this last couple of months.
Are you sure you don't have a few more?
Yeah.
So could you take one of those and just talk about the data that you've pulled from that and how you've broadcast the data to all your shareholders?
Can I
Yeah,
give a recommendation?
Get on it. Get on it.
Talk about First Five and the controversy we've had to that and how we've used the research and the data to show parents that it really is beneficial.
Here's another one we've done. And I know we're doing, we call it a first 10. And another buzzword for it, which we didn't like, is basically a soft start. And I'm working on it with my English 4 class, which is first hour in the morning, and it's in combination with the zones. But they come in and they get, I've only given them first 5 or the 5 minutes as opposed to 10 minutes, which we'll probably pilot next year. But it's a time that they can come in, sit down, catch their breath from the rush of getting to school. And what I've been preaching to them is it's not just a time to finish their breakfast, to drink their latte, to finish their game on their phone or have a conversation with their neighbor. It's all of those things, but then it's the additional piece and the life learning piece that we put in there is that it's a planning time. It's to focus on what do I have to get done today? What do I need to get done this week? What's a goal that I have that's long range, that's 2 weeks down or a month down the road? And our thought process was that everybody does that. Some people do it at 5:30 in the morning over their cup of coffee. Some people do it on their commute to work. And so everybody has that life skill, but, and most of us have learned that life skill through hard knocks, that you realize, man, I didn't do any planning today, and all of a sudden I have all of these things that I have to get done. And so with our students, what I'm working on is, okay, let's take 5 minutes and look at that schedule, look at what I need to get done, and train them that to take that 5 minutes and make that plan. And hurdles that we had to overcome was students went home, said, hey, Mom, Dad, I got a soft start this morning. I don't have to do anything the first 10 minutes of class. And parents were like, really? And so that was a communication piece that we had to overcome. We had parents meetings that they came in rather upset. They said, nobody gets 10 minutes at the beginning of their day in the real world. And they were wondering why we were giving these students 10 minutes at the beginning of the day. And that was, but after the conversation of, it's not a free 10 minutes, and you truly do use 10 minutes in the morning as you get started every day of your job, they finally realized, okay, and they saw where we were coming from and what we were trying to teach them. So one of the huge pieces of whatever your redesign is on any project is the communication with your parents. They have to understand why you're doing it, what is the outcome, how is it going to affect the students. Those are big key pieces that you have to make sure that you give your parents. Otherwise, they're going to be upset.
So Lee, could you talk, or anybody, I guess, could talk to some of the data that you've pulled from the first 10 or the first 5? Maybe it's just anecdotal, but maybe if it's, it's some data that you've collected to show that it's working, and then also how you've communicated that with your broader community.
There's a couple of pieces. One, my first hour, I was having students that were being late, tardy, just, it wasn't terrible. They were just, most of them were out in the hallway, just rushing to get into my classroom. And after I started that first 5, and they knew that they could come in and sit down and collect themselves, I had fewer tardies because I went back and compared my 3 weeks of the second 9 weeks to the 3 weeks of the pilot process, and I had 2 tardies compared to about 15 tardies the 9 weeks before. So I felt like it just gave them the opportunity to come in, and they realized that they could come in, sit down, catch their breath, and do a quick focus on where they were going to be and go. And it just, I don't know why it changed their attitude a little bit in that regard. The second thing that I would say, and that would be anecdotal, is just that giving them that first 5 minutes to do a little bit of focus time, they were more engaged when I did say, okay, let's get started. My first question of the day is, what zone are you in for the zones of regulation? And a 2-minute conversation on, I'm a yellow today, I'm a green, I'm ready to go, or I'm tired today, so I'm a blue. I had more engagement from a larger percentage of students than before we started the pilot. So I felt like, I don't know whether it's the relationship piece of me asking them, how are you doing this morning? That there's just a larger amount of engagement with all students in that class.
So just to kind of summarize, fewer tardies, but more maybe past that is higher levels of engagement of students, and
Yes,
just having that non-content type of conversation to start the day to make sure kids are in, and they can evaluate what zone they're in, those kinds of things. So moving on a little bit, as at the secondary level, what steps have you taken or are you planning on taking to keep all your staff, your parents, and your community informed about the different things that are going in to your new launch?
I think we can actually answer that from a district standpoint.
Right.
Is we've worked really hard to make sure our communication is across the board to all of our stakeholders. So we've had all of our teachers involved in the research process. They were part of a research team, and now we've moved into action teams. So we actually went back and asked our school board for 4 extra professional development days through the course of the year. And we've asked for 4 professional development days this summer, as well as 4 collaboration days where we can come together and be on the same page. So our research teams are now moving into action teams. How can we take what we know is best for kids, what we've learned in the pilots, and then really turn that into what our redesign will look like for next year? And on the parent side of communication, we have had several community meetings, and when we first started that, our goal was really just to inform them about what redesign was, and it turned into the community asked for ongoing community meetings. And one of the concerns that came up routinely was, you're not communicating with us, you're not communicating with us, you're not communicating with us. So we've kind of broadened to where we communicate through all avenues available. We publish it in the newspaper. We have our scoreboard is in both of our buildings. It's downtown. It's on our TV channel.
Yep.
We have through our local cable provider, each school district has a TV channel. It's on our website, Facebook, Twitter, mailings home. We're working on creating a Padlet that kind of shows the big picture of redesign, birth all the way through how we continue to support students once they're in college. And that's a tool that helps our teachers see the big picture, but also shows parents they can go through and pick and choose what measures will apply to my student specifically, where can I get more information about this thing, and go from there. So we've just opened it up to how can we kind of just blast them with communication almost. So
Well, that's great. In the theater downtown in Stockton, and I would tell anybody they've got the best popcorn, and that's a great place. And that's just a jewel down there in Stockton, Kansas. Their theater, but it was a great community meeting, and it didn't shock me that they wanted to continue to meet like that. So that's a really good a good tip. Could you speak about at the secondary level, what's been the greatest challenge with redesign so far?
The greatest challenge, is that what you said, Jay?
Yeah, I mean, I know it's all been totally smooth. There hasn't been any bumps in the road. Everybody's just bought in completely. So, but if that hasn't happened, could you talk about a few of the challenges that you've had at the secondary level in redesigning your system?
I'd say just making sure that all of your staff are a part of the work progress. If it doesn't make any difference where you're at. I don't think you're going to have a few that probably are not 100% buy-in on it. And you have to incorporate them into the research process so that they understand there's documentation that says these things that we're looking at are really going to affect our kids and the outcomes that those kids have. I think that's the biggest way to get teachers to buy in, is to show them the research that's backing up your redesign process. That's probably, I'd say, one of the biggest hurdles is just making sure that they get involved. We started looking at different places that have already incorporated different ways of redesign. We went to Oaks, North Dakota. We've been to down to Missouri and visited another school and had conversations across the board on Twitter with hundreds of different schools, but just making sure that the teachers that are excited about it get to go to those different places, but also the teachers that have reservations are also part of those traveling teams. And again, it's just, you got to make sure your entire group of redesign is engaged in it, is excited about it. And even if some of us are dragging our feet, we see the big picture and what it's going to do for our students, which I don't care what kind of a teacher you are, that's why we're in the business of creating the best opportunities for our students. So that's the buy-in piece for no matter whether you're 100% on board or not. I think dealing with the community and getting the information out to the community is a huge hurdle. We had our first community meeting. They said, communicate more. And so our building leadership team, we went overboard and we communicated more. And the community came back again and said, wow, you guys are not doing enough. And we were like, thinking we just went crazy with it. And they were still not, didn't feel like they were informed enough. So that would be a hurdle to make sure that you definitely address is every way possible that you can communicate with parents, make sure that you're attempting that.
The one thing, sorry, I'll say from a district level also is make sure your website is user friendly. And that's something we actually went out and did some research after some of the voices were heard, and we're changing our website a little bit now. We're actually going to change it even more, and we're developing an app that will be able to be downloaded by our community and our kids, and so that's coming. It's not here yet.
So what I heard was, some of the challenges have been engaging your staff and making sure they're on board. And the ways you've done that is you've taken them on school visits, and you've also got them onto your research teams to engage them. And so, and a lot of times it's not pushed back. It's just we got to, as Tammy likes to say, we got to make sure we push through. And a lot of most of the people on staff they're there for it's exactly what you said, Lee, for the kids, and to see them prosper and grow in all those different areas. It's just sometimes you have to question things, especially when they're new. So thank you for that answer. Last question, then we'll move over to the elementary question or elementary portion of the meeting. What have been the positive experiences that you've had through this process so far?
I'll speak to that. I don't think we've ever, as a staff, gotten to brainstorm and dream big and not be told what we're going to do change-wise. It's also kind of scary because we don't know what's going to come of it. But we've really had some good discussions as a staff. I think it's been energizing for me. It's kind of hard as a high school student when you're stuck in your own little classroom to be able to have those discussions. But if we try to eat lunch together, those kind of things, that we do have those discussions. But that'd be my positive.
Great.
I've seen some teachers that relatively new teachers that had, as they come out of college, they had these kind of bright ideas of what they wanted their classroom to be and look like, and they get in the old structure that's been there for, like you guys told us, 150 years. And all of a sudden, this brand new teacher has to start conforming to the status quo, what it's always been. And what Jenny says is, what I've seen with some of those teachers is the light bulbs come on and saying, I can try something different than what it's always been. And that, like she said, the ability to dream big and look outside of the box, I think it gives your staff a chance to rejuvenate and look at how they are approaching things in a new way.
Well, that's great. And I just appreciate your time. At this time, I'm going to push it off.
Hey, Jay, can I have just 1 second? I want to bring up one thing.
Yeah.
I'm on several advisory committees for post-secondary, and they are scared to death of what I'm talking to them about. They get antsy. They're jumping around, wondering. They said, well, post-secondary, these kids won't be ready. I said they'll be more ready. I was in one the other day, and the guy couldn't stop moving when I was talking about how we were going to change our educational process at Hillsborough. And so I'm wondering, what does that look like? Some of our teachers who have just had kids graduate and they're going to post-secondary, and they say, well, when they go to KU, it looks nothing like that. We're not going to have them prepared. So those are some of the issues we're getting to hear from teachers that are having students graduate. But I can guarantee you their students will do great at KU because they have all the things met. But as we talk about all this changing, there's a lot of concern there.
Well, and that's why it's so important that as a state we partner with higher ed and business and industry and all those different places that kids land after they finish K-12. But I know people get nervous when you start changing the status quo, as Lee started talking about. It's kind of human nature. But if you look at the data, if you look at our students and how they are performing at the higher ed level, everybody can get behind that we need to improve that. And so, in a way, I'm really proud of our K-12 system because the adults in our system are recognizing these issues and we're acting on it. We're not just talking about it. And so I think that's just going to naturally, I don't know if you want to say put pressure on higher ed, but if it does, that's great. It's to make sure that they are also altering their system for the students that are coming out of our system. And I know there's a lot. It's easy to bag on higher ed, but I know there's some pockets of innovation. I know a lot of the universities and community colleges are doing a lot more with onboarding students, having community groups to be part of, so kids can build that sense of belonging. It's not just an academic institution. It's actually more of they have that sense of belonging. So I know there are a lot of programs going in with that. I'm just excited in Kansas that we're connected. We're looking at things like the first 15, some legislation that's going through that pays the tuition costs for the first 5 college courses that virtually most kids take. Just some of those things that are going on. But absolutely, when you challenge the status quo like this, there are going to be people that get nervous.
And believe me, I believe we're in K-12 taking the right direction.
Yeah.
But I'm just saying those are some of the things that I get to hear when I'm out on some of those advisory boards. And so we kind of chuckled a little bit about it after we left.
Yeah.
Because it shouldn't make them. I mean, because obviously we're going to push the top end too.
Mm-hmm.
They're only thinking about the kids that they think won't make it. They need to be thinking about, what does the top end look like now as we let them, we're not holding them back. We're letting them grow, expand. So it's just an interesting conversation that I've had in the last couple of weeks, but I felt very good about what this group is doing and what Mercury's doing.
Absolutely. We're fully behind it too, Max. And I just really appreciate that time. Does anybody have any questions for Stockton as far as their secondary redesign? I know I've seen a couple of chat questions, and but anybody want to unmute and talk through that? Okay, Tammy, it's all you. Take it away.
Oh, actually, it's all Stockton. So yeah, so I'm really excited to be able to present them to you. The thing about that the things that we've been grappling with, just piggybacking off of some of this other conversation is let's all think a little bit deeper about what we define as pushback versus people just asking really good questions. Because sometimes we think that because someone asked a question that maybe they're pushing back. And so, one of the things that we're trying to think of is, how much data do you really need before you make a decision to pivot where you're at? And so we want to make sure that as you're piloting, as you're implementing, just because one person asks a question doesn't mean we have to, change direction. And so, so with that, elementary, Stockton people, tell us what you're piloting, what's going well, or just really whatever you want to tell us today.
Where do we start?
I just have wrapped up a standards-based grading pilot in my 5th grade math classroom. Went well with my students. I'm anticipating this. I gave the 5th graders the options for them to take it home and explain it to their parents, or for them to come to school one evening so that we could collaboratively explain it to the parents. And they're like, yeah, you're going to help us. So one day after spring break, we'll have an evening where the parents come in. And what I did is provide grades traditionally as well as standards-based so that they can compare and contrast what they were being taught and what those outcomes look like and what they really meant to the students. It kind of opened the students' eyes that an A really doesn't tell you anything about math, but the standards-based grading, they were able to see exactly where they needed to improve and what they needed, to continue to work on. As a teacher, it was a huge, eye-opening and kind of embarrassing moment for me that I have not used this before. I always took pride on knowing where my students were and which ones were struggling with which concepts and everything, but the standard-based grading took it to a whole new level. It was a lot of work, but yeah, I was pretty embarrassed that I had not tried this before in my classroom. So, yeah.
Some of the other academic pilots that we have going on is we are piloting a combination of personalized learning and blended learning. So for our math side, we have piloted Dreambox, which is kind of a self-leveling math, and our students absolutely love it. They beg for it. They want to do it at recess. They can't wait to do it during their free time. It's just been really motivating for them. And it's allowed us to go to small group math instruction kind of across the board. And we've seen really good things happen where we can really look at their strengths and weaknesses and support them in that. We've also seen really phenomenal growth in even over the course of the pilot in how much students have made. And then we have also, and this has kind of been a year-long pilot, for guided reading, we have K through 3 mixed age groups that we've met with, and we've seen a huge jump in reading levels as well. At all of our yeah. So again, just like the high school, we have research pilots going on too to be able to implement project-based learning across the board next year. So we have 3 pilots going on for social emotional intelligence. And they're the same 3 as the high school. We have the first 10 being piloted in a 5th grade PE class. We have kindergarten through 5th grade communities, as well as a mixed junior high community going on. And then we have zones of regulation happening in preschool, 2nd grade, and 4th grade. So just kind of across the board, trying to hit different sections of the population so that when we go to full implementation, we have a lot of people to rely on as far as what works well and how to support teachers in the next phase of that.
There is a question in the chat that says, do you just do K2 and 3-5 mixed age groups for reading, or could K and 5 potentially be together?
K and 5 potentially could be together. Right now that, like, piloting within the old system, we have some scheduling conflicts that don't always work. And so right now it's K3. And like, for example, the group that I lead has 1 3rd grader, 1 1st grader, and 5 kindergartners. So we're really just looking at what is their instructional reading level and how can we get them exactly what they need without whole group instruction.
Great. So, so tell us a little bit more about your social, emotional, and your families. Where are you pulling like the ideas for what you're talking about with students from?
Absolutely. It was really important to us that it be authentic to who we are in Stockton, but also to the needs of our students. And so one of our earliest conversations was, do we want a canned curriculum? And across the board, the answer was no. And the only reason we could come up with to support that would be we could meet hesitant teachers right where they are. And we decided it would really be best to bring them around the table once a week and talk about, here's kind of our general focus for next week. How could we brainstorm ideas of what you could do during that time? So for our pilot, the groups meet for 30 minutes on Fridays. And we just determined the focus ahead of time. Before our pilot, we just listed out all the dates we knew we would meet. And we have 6 Tiger Touchstones, which was in the district 3 years ago. And that was student input, teacher input, community, school board. And so those are 6 character words that kind of define who we are and who we want our students to be. And so we divided out and we decided we would do 2 weeks on respect, 2 on responsibility, and then we've just hit our first unit on honesty. And so we meet in the morning, and then that afternoon we come to the table and talk about what went well, what kind of discussions are you hearing, so that we can really respond to students the next week. For example, when we talked about responsibility, students did a great job of talking about what home responsibilities were. And across the board, they could not come up with what does it look like, sound like, feel like, even at all at school. So we knew for week 2, we really had to go back and get creative and think about how to lead them into those discussions about what is responsibility at school. So we quickly found out that our 30 minutes goes by so fast, and we're really excited to look to next year and make that something that we do every day.
One way that the community is going to be shown to the
Oh, Lindsay, can you louder or closer to the microphone?
Okay, one way that the community groups are going to be shown to the community and to parents is in our spring music program. It's going to be really based on our communities. The kids are going to sit together in their communities with their leader. And we've all been working on like a chant or a dance or handshake kind of thing, cheer, whatever you want to call it, and kind of express that. And each community is going to get up and have their time to show what they've been working on. We're tossing around the idea of each community having a t-shirt that or a color too that goes and shows them as their little group together. So just kind of trying to find another venue to bring that out to the community and show that off a little bit.
Great. Stacy, I have a question for you. as principal and as an administrator, most of the people on this particular Zoom meeting are administrators. And so as you've been through this redesign process and, with the redesign teams, can you tell us what have been your biggest challenges as a building leader with this work?
You've heard me share a couple of times in different meetings. I'm going to peek in the corner here. Sorry. This is my 5th year as an administrator in the building, but prior to that, I was here 23 years as a teacher, and I knew we had a strong culture of teacher leaders. I just didn't know until this point how strong it was. I'm very much invested as an administrator to listen carefully to my staff, to follow their lead, to be that yes person that says, yes, try that. So we had many pockets of innovation within our building, but this gave the freedom for those people to step outside their room, share more with their research teams and now action teams to put that in a systemic change. And I think the neatest part about this, and it's been a pretty easy process for me because I tend to be that kind of a leader, is I really stood back. I've been there to be available to offer resources, both time, money when possible, visits when possible, but to really allow the staff to lead this and for them to be theirs. And I know that through this process that they have grown. Again, I thought I knew the culture of our building, but I really know the culture now. And it's been interesting, the people that I thought would step up maybe didn't as much. But then as you've heard from the building team here today, I could walk out this door tomorrow and it would keep going. And that's what you want to have happen. You want to have it be so embedded in the culture that it will continue on. And that's what's going to make the true change in the long run.
So one of the things that's we're always looking for models, right? And so you guys are building a model for the small school. So you're essentially pre-K-12 in not exactly the same building, but you are pretty much, pretty well connected. Mm-hmm. What would you say are the benefits of being a district your size with redesign? And then on the flip side, what do you think your challenges are for a small district? Benefits first and then challenges.
I think part of the benefits are we know our community well. We know our families when they come in, we know who their parents are, we know their siblings and their cousins, and we can anticipate some of their needs ahead of time. And along with that comes the challenge of who we want to be doesn't always match up with what the values of our community are. For example, like on the flip to standards-based grading, we value knowing, does a student do this and do this well? We want deep understanding. We want to be able to apply it to projects. We want lifetime success. We have a pocket of our population that wants to know their students are the best and will float to the top. We want to know their students are academically eligible to play sports. We have other pockets who they really just want to survive today. And so how do we meet them where they are, be very understanding and respectful of that, yet still support them in the change process?
I think one of the benefit is that we have less staff. We're a pretty tight-knit staff, K through 12. The alley, at times is a hindrance, but most of the time, the alley that separates our building really isn't. I can go to Lee and have discussions with Lee. I can go to any high school teacher down to kindergarten, and we're pretty open and honest with each other and sharing our thoughts and our ideas. And, you pretty much know where everybody in your building stands with that. But at the same time, the lack of resources as a small school has provided some challenges for us. We don't have a lot of staff to carry the weight of everything that we want to do. So a lot of us are, at times like connected to an IV of caffeine or something. And we've got to be each other's cheerleaders to make this a success. But when we're all depleted of energy, who's going to stand up and be that cheerleader? And thankfully we have some great administration that does that. But also looking at, to really pull some of this off. We need some more staff next year. You know, where's that financial piece going to fall into place to get more staff on board? Remodeling some rooms, that type of stuff. We're just going to have to get more creative. And so, but that's a challenge with a small district.
I think also trying to find substitute teachers to fill in for all of the in-service and things we've had to do. That's been a creative challenge.
I think something that is a huge positive out of it is we are all very emotionally invested in the success of all of our students. I'm not just a kindergarten teacher anymore. I really greatly care about helping Lee do this well at the high school and making sure everybody is successful. So it's really just kind of taking our walls down in how we can support students, staff across the board.
Well, one of the things that, as Jay and I have been being coached by different entities, we are being coached by Dr. Dole and Dr. Devon at KSDE. And one of the things that they said early on that you also brought up is that every district has to really know the politics of their community. And like you said, you know everyone in town, you know who's most likely to fly off the handle, you know who needs a little extra TLC in presenting things, you know all of that because you're a small town and you're a small community. But as communities get bigger, there are, those politics are still at play. And so knowing in a town the size of, say, Junction City, knowing, who shows up at the coffee shop to spread rumors, what the Church Alliance is saying, what are those entities in every community where news spreads fast and it's not always accurate, and being really strategic about how to communicate with those groups and stay ahead of the messaging, because with social media, the wrong information can get out so much faster than the right information, and really trying to be strategic about just blasting the right news in every possible way. And so what you all have done in Stockton, with the movie theater and your TV station and your downtown scoreboard and your business and industry being, on board, those are things that could be scaled up in a bigger district if there's that focus on that. And so that's probably the biggest thing that Jay and I, we're not communications or advertising people, but if someone did have some kind of advertising background, how could we harness that kind of communication to get the right messages out ahead of the gossip and the misinformation? And I think you guys have done a really, really good job with that. I think it's something that we're always learning more, and like you said, you think you've put the message out 100 different ways, and lo and behold, you've got a whole subset of people that have no idea what's going on. So, and we struggle with that at the state level too. So you've done a great job with that. So elementary or district-wide, is there anything else that you'd like to share this morning?
I think for me, this whole redesign process has made me a better teacher. If there's any district out there that's like on the fence of whether or not they want to do Gemini 2 or on down the road, it has changed me as a teacher. I don't know, 200%, whatever, but I have changed as a teacher towards my students, towards my fellow teachers, as a professional, just all around. It has just been an amazing process and journey that we're not there yet. I don't think we're ever going to get wherever there is past the moon, because it's got to constantly change. It has to make it work. but just seeing the growth in the staff here and the push for growth has just been amazing. And I don't think without the redesign process, we would have ever got to witness any of what's been going on with our staff growth.
You discover through the process of redesign, what enlightened me as much as anything was, one, through the research process and just talking with other teachers, it gives you a justification for things that you've already done that are good and that you don't want to get rid of. But it also gives you, as she said, new ideas that you can change and tweak the classroom to make things better. And I think as a teacher, I've been teaching for 26 years, and it's every time you're faced with a new challenge, it just makes you a better teacher. You find new and innovative ways to address the students, and I think that's our goal overall is how can we impact that student and give them something better than what they've had before. And I think that's what the redesign has been for us, is how can we produce better students than we've been doing for the last 25 years.
All right. Well, thank you so much. Let's go ahead and open it up for questions. They can be elementary specific questions, or maybe they're system or, district-wide questions. Just open it up. You can use the chat or you can unmute. Or comments. You could just make comments. Well, I see a lot of people smiling on the video. So there we go. That's a little bit of feedback. I typically, Stockton crew, this group is super quiet, host questions, but they don't usually unmute too often to speak. But I was on the phone with a superintendent yesterday from a Gemini district, and I don't know if he's on right now, but anyway, he was just like, I was saying, gosh, what do you think about the Gemini Zoom meetings? Because we feel like we're going to go out and visit all of these Gemini districts in April and find out, what do they need for next year, and how could we, improve what we've done. And this particular superintendent said, I love the Zoom meetings. He's like, I never have to leave my office or my town. I can just listen in and hear all of the great things that are going on. But yeah, they're kind of a shy bunch. We'll see how shy they are when we go out in April to see them face to face, right?
And I'll just throw out there that, we had a really successful Kansans Can Symposium early last week. And thank you for everyone that's on this call that was able to attend. It was a phenomenal professional development event that grew from last year. I think they had around 250 people attend 2 different symposiums, and this year, well over 500 people coming together. And the Stockton Mercury presentation was phenomenal. And we often just kind of fly by the seat of our pants, but we did make SDAC was able to record all those sessions, and we'll be sending those out. And so if you want to learn more about what Stockton's got cooking there and about redesign, they really did a phenomenal job of presenting, and you could just feel the passion and the ownership from the redesign team, what you've heard today. And so if you want to learn more about that and the other Mercury buildings, those videos will be sent out hopefully sooner than later, as we move forward. So I'm not sure there's anything left to talk about today. If there are anything that the Gemini schools want to unmute or talk about in the chat, or verbally, please unmute and we can talk about that. We'll, as we typically will do, we'll stay on for another 5 or 10 minutes until everybody has left the chat or the meeting. So, but I just want to take the time to thank the team at Stockton for being on with us this morning. I know you're looking forward to spring break. This is kind of a last thing before spring break. And what I've been telling the redesign teams is you can't think about redesign over spring break.
Right.
Yeah, you can't think about it. So you can think about other things in your life you want to redesign, but not the school. So, but enjoy it, and thanks for joining us today.
Thank you.
Thank you.